My parents gave my sister a down payment for a house, then told me, "You're independent, you'll figure it out." So I did and bought a house twice the size. When they asked if they could stay with me, I just smiled and said, "Figure it out." Lena, sweetie, your sister really needs this help right now. So did I, remember, but you're independent. You figured it out. She's not like you. Exactly. I figured it out. And I'm guessing now you'll have to too. I, 32 female, never thought I'd be the type to write into one of these subreddits. But I've been sitting with this story for a while now, and people keep telling me, it's one for the books. I'm not here to get validation. And I'm definitely not looking for revenge. I just need to write it out. Maybe someone's been through something similar. Maybe someone's where I was 10 years ago and needs to hear what happens when you stop trying to earn love. That was never conditional to begin with for someone else. I'm from North Carolina, grew up in Charlotte, lived most of my adult life in Raleigh, and recently bought a home in Durham. If you know Theoria, you know it's not cheap to get ahead here these days, unless you get real creative or really lucky. I had neither at first, just grit, and apparently a lot more independence than my family ever knew what to do with. I'm the older sister. My sister Maya, now 30, is 2 years younger than me. We were the stereotypical opposites. Me, the planner, the worker, the old soul. Maya was the free spirit, the sensitive one who always had new boyfriends, new hobbies, and a permanent place under my parents' protective wing. Our parents, Claire and David, are, let's just say, traditional when it comes to how they divide their expectations. My mom used to joke that Maya was her little flower, and I was the oak. Sounds poetic until you realize one gets watered and the other's expected to survive a drought. Maya barely scraped through high school, dropped out of college twice, and never held down a job for more than 6 months. I, on the other hand, worked my way through college, graduating with honors. While balancing 2 part-time jobs, I was never bailed out. Never needed to. I thought that meant they respected me. What I learned is that sometimes being competent just means getting overlooked. About 4 years ago, Maya announced that she and her then-boyfriend Blake, a car mechanic, she met at a music festival, were getting engaged and looking to buy a house in Nashville. I was at my parents' place the night they shared the news. We were halfway through dinner when my mom blurted out how excited she was to help with the down payment. I froze. I had bought my own place, a modest 2-bedroom town home in Raleigh. 2 years earlier, scraped together every cent of it myself, lived on ramen, gave up vacations, shopping, and dating for a long while. When I brought up the fact that I never received any help, my dad gave me that practiced fatherly smile and said, "But you're different, Lena. You're independent. You figure things out." I laughed. Not out loud, but the kind of hollow laugh that echoes inside your own chest. I didn't argue, didn't ask for what couldn't be given. I just nodded and drove home early, and the next day I made a spreadsheet. What followed were 2 years of hustle-izzled furniture on weekends, learned how to flip antique pieces from estate sales, and took on freelance consulting gigs. I eliminated every luxury, ate a lot of eggs and peanut butter, even rented out my second bedroom to a grad student. Every bonus went into savings. I didn't complain, I just worked. Then came the market shift, and somehow I timed it right. I sold my town home at a solid profit and bought a large colonial-style house in Durham, a real home with 5 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and a backyard big enough for the dog I hadn't had time to adopt. Yet I didn't post about it to gloat, but I did share a few photos online, mostly to friends who'd been rooting for me. One caption read, "When they tell you you're independent, believe them and build something even bigger." A week later, the call started. Mom was the first, "Congratulate me." Sounded strained, then she slipped it in. "You know your sister's been having a rough time. Blake lost his job again. They're falling behind, but I'm sure you know how to help them, right? You always figure things out." I bit my tongue. Just told her I was sorry to hear that. Then a few months later, my dad's company went under. Retirement plans were shattered. The savings mostly gone, spent on bailing out Maya's mortgage twice. Suddenly, my parents were talking about downsizing. Just for a while, my mom said, "Until we find our footing." She asked if they could move in with me. I sat on the back porch, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the same voice that once told me I didn't need help because I was too strong to need it, and I realized something. This wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity, I said as calmly as I could. "I remember when I bought my first place and asked for help. You told me I was independent, that I'd figure it out, and I did. So maybe it's your turn now." She didn't respond right away. I could hear her breathing, could almost picture Heron the other end holding her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. She muttered something about how that's not the same, and this isn't about fairness. I didn't push. I said goodbye, hung up. Maya called me that night. Angry, called me selfish, said I'd changed, said family should always be there for each other. I told her I agreed family should be there for each other, but only if it's mutual, only if it's not just a ladder they climb and kick away when they're at the top. She hung up on me. I haven't spoken to her since. I expected silence to follow that night. And at first, that's what I got. A whole week passed. No calls, no messages. I wasn't sure if I felt relief or dread, but I was breathing easier. Then came the texts, not from Maya, not from my parents, but from an extended family. First, it was my aunt. On my dad's side, a woman I'd spoken to maybe once a year at most. Lena, honey, I don't want to step on toes, but your mom and dad are really struggling. If you can open your heart and home even for a little while, I think it would mean the world. Then, a cousin I hadn't seen in 5 years. Heard you bought a mansion? Nice. Maybe time to give back. Some were more passive-aggressive. A few came right out and said, they did so much for you growing up. One even asked me if I remembered who paid for your braces. That one made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because that's what it all boiled down to. Braces. A few $1,000s from a decade ago was apparently the invoice that justified. A lifetime of emotional imbalance. I didn't respond to most of them. What could I say that wouldn't sound cold or defensive? I knew the version of me that my parents had built over the years. The one they fed others, the prideful one, the rigid one, the one who never needed anyone. And maybe that was true. I had become self-reliant, but not because I was born that way, because I had no other choice. Meanwhile, I kept living my life. Slowly, quietly, I started investing in the house. This house that had become a symbol of everything I built without anyone's help. I turned one of the spare rooms into a library. Not a fancy one, just floating shelves, a comfy armchair, and a floor lamp. I got secondhand. I spent hours there getting lost in books I'd never had. Time to read before I planted vegetables in the backyard, joined a local group for women, homeowners, took my first solo vacation, to the Outer Banks, stayed in a little cottage by the water. I remember sitting on the porch of that cottage with a cup off coffee, watching the waves roll in, thinking, so this is peace. This is what it feels like to not be the fallback plan. How? But even peace has an echo on the surface. I was calm-centered, but there were days it crept back in. The guilt, the second-guessing. What if I had said yes? What if I had let them move in just for a few months? Would I feel better or worse? It came to a head when my dad sent me a letter. A real letter, handwritten in all caps like he always did. It was short but careful. He said he understood why I made the choice. I did, that he hadn't realized how deep the imbalance went. He didn't apologize directly, but the words carried weight. I know we expected more from you because you always delivered. That might have been a mistake. I sat with that letter for days, read it over and over. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was the most I'd ever gotten. A few weeks later, I heard through a family friend that my parents had rented a small duplex in Greensboro. They were living modestly. My mom picked up part-time hours at a local bookstore. My dad did odd jobs for neighbors. They weren't thriving, but they weren't on the street either. And Maya, she and Blake separated not long after. My parents' finances ran dry. I don't know the details, but I can guess she's staying with my parents again. Apparently working part-time at a floral shop, still waiting for someone to rescue her. I suppose people say time changes things, but it's not just time. It's space. It's silent. It's the way relationships recalibrate when you stop playing the role someone handed you and step out of the script entirely. I don't hate them, any of them, but I don't chase them either. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm trying to prove I deserve to be loved. Fall rolled in. The air was sharp. The mornings quieter. I always loved this time of year in North Carolina. The way the sky turned a little grayer and the leaves gave one last burst of color before letting go. There's something symbolic about that, I guess. Letting go of what no longer serves you, of old stories, old roles. By October, I was spending more time outdoors. My backyard garden was thriving more than I expected. Despite my amateur efforts, I had cherry tomatoes, herbs, peppers, even a few scraggly cucumbers trying their best. Funny how something as simple as watching something grow could make me feel more in control than I ever did with my family. Then one Sunday afternoon, I got a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. No delivery, no appointments. I opened the door, and there she was, Maya. She looked tired. Not in the way someone looks after a bad night's sleep, but worn like life had been using sandpaper on her for a while. She was wearing one of Mom's old cardigans. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she had this guarded look in her eyes I'd never seen before. "Hey," she said. I didn't say anything at first, just leaned against the door frame and waited. "Can I come in?" she asked. I didn't move. Why, she sighed. "Not for money. Not to stay. I don't." No, I wanted to talk, I hesitated. My first instinct was to protect my space, my peace. But something in her voice wasn't rehearsed, wasn't manipulative. It was raw. So I let her in. We sat in the kitchen. I made tea because it gave me something to do with. My hands. She sat hunched over, staring at the cup like it had answers in it. "I didn't come here to fight," she said. "Good," I replied. Just she paused. "I wanted to see for myself. You've done well." I nodded slowly. "I worked hard." "I know," she whispered. I used to tell myself you were just lucky, or that you made it look easier than it was, but I get it now. That caught me off guard. She looked up at me, eyes glassy. "I've been angry at you, really angry. Thought you were being spiteful, but now I see it. You were." Just done, I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to let her off the hook. "Not yet, Mom and Dad," she started but didn't finish the sentence. Instead, she looked around the kitchen like it held the words. She didn't know how to say, "They gave me everything and it still wasn't enough, and they gave you nothing and expected everything." I felt something catch in my throat. She had said the thing I'd spent years trying to put into words. "I didn't want it to be like this," she added. "But I think it was always going to be, because I let them treat me like glass, and they treated you like stone." She sat back suddenly exhausted. "And maybe we both got broken anyway." The kettle whistled softly. I turned it off. We didn't talk much after that. She finished her tea. I walked her to the door. There was no hug. No apologies. Just a strange stillness between us, like something had been aired out that had lived too long in darkness after she left. I sat by the window for a while, watched the breeze tug at the last yellow leaves on the tree out front. That visit didn't fix anything. It didn't make us sisters again in the way people imagine, laughing over wine and reminiscing like nothing happened. But it was real, and that was more than I expected. The weeks after Maya's visit felt strange, not bad, just unsettled. Like something that had always been crooked had suddenly shifted into a new position. And now I was trying to walk differently. I'd been angry for so long that peace felt like suspicious silence. But I didn't push. I let the quiet hang there, and it stayed that way until Thanksgiving. Normally, holidays were just something I got through. I wasn't the type to host, and for the past few years I'd either worked through it or accepted invites from friends who knew better than to leave me alone. But that year, I got a group text from my cousin Alana. She was hosting a potluck at her place in Chapel Hill and wanted to bring the whole family together again. I ignored the message for 2 days. Then I got a second one, this time directly from her Maya. Said she came to see you. She told me a little about the talk. Just so, I think what you did was fair, but I also think it would be good if we all sat in the same room again. Even if Noon says anything, I wasn't sure if that was an invitation or a guilt trip. Maybe both. But something about it nodded at me. Not because I wanted to mend things, but because I wanted to see if they'd let themselves be seen. If any of them could sit across from me and look me in the eye without pretending nothing had happened. I texted back, "If I come, it's as a guest, not a fixer, not a buffer, not the strong one holding it all together." She replied almost immediately, "Got it." So I went. It felt surreal walking into that living room. The smell of turkey and sweet potatoes, the sound of someone's toddler running around with a plastic sword, people laughing a little too loudly. Familiar. faces all smiling like time hadn't passed. Maya was already there, sitting near the fireplace, holding a paper plate of green beans and stuffing. Our eyes met. She gave a small nod. Across the room, my parents were seated side by side on a low couch. Dad looked older, smaller. Somehow, he was wearing one of those sweaters I hadn't seen since my high school graduation. My mom looked tired, her makeup heavier than usual. She didn't smile when she saw me, just blinked, as if, surprised I came, I greeted. People casually hugs polite questions. How have you been? But underneath it all, there was tension. Not icy, exactly, more like careful warmth. Like everyone was tiptoeing over a floor they weren't sure would hold. Dinner was served buffet style. I loaded my plate and found a seat near the window. Maya eventually drifted over and sat beside me. We didn't talk, just ate in parallel. Then something unexpected happened. My dad stood up to get more food and paused by my chair. He looked down at me, cleared his throat and said, "House of yours is something else, looks strong like you." Then he walked off. I didn't know what to do with that. It wasn't praise, not really, but it was something, a recognition, maybe a step toward acknowledgement, even if it came with that typical dad armor of awkward deflection. My mom never said anything. To me anyway. But at one point I caught her watching me from across the room, eyes distant. She looked away when I noticed, but not fast enough to hide it. Maya and I left around the same time. As we stood by the door putting on coats, she turned to me and said, "Thanks for coming. I know it wasn't easy, it wasn't hard either." I said, "Just different." She smiled, a real one this time, "I'm trying." "You know," she added, "it's just hard being the one who finally has to grow up." I looked at her for a long second. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It is." We said goodbye. No promises, no plans. But something between us felt looser, less knotted. The days after the gathering passed quietly. I returned to my work, my garden, my early morning walks. The weather dipped lower. I swapped out light jackets for thicker sweaters and started baking again, something I hadn't done in years. It felt good to fill the house with warmth that didn't come from anyone else's expectations. One afternoon, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small picture frame, handmade carved wood with a natural finish. Inside, it was a photo I didn't know existed, me about 7 years old, holding Maya on a swing, grinning with both front teeth missing. Taped to the back was a note and handwriting I recognized instantly. "You were always the strong one. I never should have made that a burden. I'm sorry, Mom." I didn't cry, but I felt something shift again. A weight I didn't even know I'd still been carrying. Finally easing its grip, I placed the frame on the bookshelf in my library. Did that mean everything was healed? No, not even close. But for the first time, I felt like someone else had picked up a piece of the wreckage instead of leaving it for me to sort. By the time Christmas came around, I was ready to skip it altogether. For years, holidays had been a mix of performative smiles and subtle jabs. The kind where someone passes the mashed potatoes with a compliment that feels like a correction. I was used to being the one who made things run smoothly, the one who picked out thoughtful gifts, the one who remembered the little details others forgot. But this year, I didn't want any of it. I almost booked a solo weekend in Asheville. Ironic, I know, but something made me pause. Instead, I stayed home. No tree, no lights, just a wreath on the door and a candle burning in the living room. It was quiet, and I liked it that way. Then 2 days before Christmas Eve, I got another text from Maya. "We're doing a small thing at Mom and Dad's new place. Nothing big. I know you probably have plans, but if you felt like stopping by, I think they'd want that, no expectations." She didn't try to sell it. No guilt, no manipulation, just left it there. I stared at it for a long time. Eventually, I responded with, "I'll think about it." And I did. On Christmas Eve, around 6 p.m. in the evening, I got in the car and drove 45 minutes to Greensboro. No wrapped gifts, no bottle of wine, just me. Their duplex was small, brick front, narrow porch. One of those rental mailboxes bolted to the siding. When I parked, I noticed Maya's car was already there. The windows glowed with soft yellow light. I could hear muffled laughter from inside. I stood at the door for longer than I'd like to admit. Finally, I knocked. Maya answered. She looked surprised, but only for a moment. You came? Yeah. She stepped aside, letting me in. The living room was warm decorated, in that slightly mismatched way that comes with downsizing quickly. A modest artificial tree stood in the corner dressed in old ornaments I recognized. From childhood, the smell of roasted chicken and cinnamon hung in the air. Mom was in the kitchen pulling something from the oven. She turned, saw me, and her face did this thing, like it wanted to smile but didn't know if it was allowed. You came? She echoed. I did, Dad, while sitting in an armchair, TV on low volume, watching an old holiday concert rerun. Hen nodded at me. Hey, kiddo. Hey. We didn't hug. No one did, but I sat. I ate a little, drank some cider. It was weird. Not because anyone was hostile, but because it felt like they were all trying very hard to pretend they didn't. Remember the last few years? Like skipping straight to normal would erase everything in between. But I didn't play along. I didn't offer to help clean the dishes. I didn't bring up old memories. I just existed. There fully myself. Not performing. Not rescuing, about. Halfway through dessert, Maya brought out a small gift bag and handed it to me. It's nothing big, she said. I just saw it and thought of you. Inside was a book, used spines slightly bent, A Copy of the Housekeeper and the Professor. She remembered it was one of my favorites, and I had lost my copy in a move years ago. I ran my thumb along the edge of the pages and nodded. Thanks. She looked relieved. Not because I'd accepted the gift, but because she had managed to offer something that wasn't an apology. Or a plea, just something human. We didn't stay late. I left around 9 as while Dad was already dozing off, and Mom had retreated to the kitchen to do one last tidy. Maya walked me out. As I opened the car door, she said, It's weird, right? How different. Everything is now. I looked at her. It's not just different. It's honest. That's something. She nodded slowly, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold, Happy Christmas, Lena. You too. The dryback was quiet. No music, just the hum of tires on winter pavement and the steady rhythm of my thoughts. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated, but I felt rooted, like I had finally come out the other side of something I never had the language for while I was in it. Not healed, not fixed, but I was free to feel what I needed to feel without explaining it to anyone. Spring came, and with it change the grass in my backyard grew wild with early green. I pulled weeds every Saturday morning with my sleeves rolled up, dirt under my nails, and the feeling that maybe everything was right where it needed to be. I hadn't talked much with my parents since Christmas. There were a few texts, some scattered photos from Maya, a flowering tree, a recipe she'd finally gotten right. A picture of her cat, no forced small. Talk, no guilt tripping, and I didn't reach out either. But then in late April, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, this is Evan Caldwell. The voice said, I'm a real estate broker, representing David and Claire. I believe you're their daughter. My heart thudded. Yes, this is Lena. I just wanted to confirm some details. Your parents listed you as a potential cosigner for a small loan on a condo unit in Cary. I need to confirm your involvement. My stomach twisted. I didn't agree to cosign. Anything, a pause. That's important. I'll follow up with them. I hung up furious. I called my parents. Immediately Dad answered, What is this about a cosign? He sounded tired. It's nothing, just a paperwork mix-up. You put my name down. That's not a mix-up. We were just trying to get approved, he said, voice low. We didn't think it had come to you, unbelievable, Lena. He said, suddenly more awake. We're not asking you to pay for anything. We just need a signature. It's a small condo. We can afford it, but the bank wants a little more security. It's just until things stabilize. You already used my name without my permission. Technically, it wasn't submitted. Technically, you lied. Snapped silence. Then quietly, we didn't know who else to turn to. And there it was. That old music. The subtle hum beneath every conversation with them. You owe us something because we have nothing left. Except this time I didn't feel guilty. I felt insulted. They still saw me as a safety net they hadn't earned. A second option if Maya didn't work out, still expecting me to carry the weight of their poor decisions because I knew how to balance the load, but I wasn't carrying anyone anymore. No, I said simply, no, you don't get to leverage me because I didn't fail like she did. You don't get to use my name or my credit or my patience anymore. You made your choices. You gave her everything, and now you're getting everything back from her. I ended the call. An hour later, Maya texted. They told me what happened. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. That summer, I hosted a garden party, just friends, colleagues, neighbors, people who had seen me at my worst. My realist I grilled, I poured wine, and I stood barefoot in the grass, while people complimented the hydrangeas I'd planted from scratch, late. In the evening, someone asked me if my family would be stopping by. I smiled and said, "Not, they're figuring things out." And just like that, the final piece slid into place. The revenge wasn't in slamming doors or screaming matches. It wasn't in turning my back or cutting ties out of rage. It was in letting go fully, completely, and building a life so good, so self-made, that no one could take credit for it. Not even Theonis, who tried Maya, and I still speak now and then. It's civil cordial. She's learning how to stand on her own. Slowly. Maybe genuinely. But I've stopped being her shadow, her safety rope. She knows that. And my parents. They're in a small rental in Cary. Last I heard, they were still looking for a way out of that place. But that's their story now, not mine. I no longer make room for people who only show up when they're falling, because I didn't just figure it out. I thrived, and that in the end is the best kind of revenge there is.